Hey everyone, it's Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. I am here with the president of the UAW, Shawn Fain. You know, when I saw the incredible work and organizing and just the inspiring movement within the auto workers across the country, not only, and of course, in our backyard in Michigan, I wanted to hear more about what was happening behind the scenes. And, you know, one of the things you should know, Shawn, is that I really gravitated towards you right away when you always brought your family into like your roots, and it's just connected me to you because my connection to the UAW and to really organizing and movement work in our country for justice was the fact that my dad, with fourth grade education, came to the United States at 19, and his first time he ever felt human dignity was getting in that plant in downriver in Flat Rock, Michigan, and he forgot his first paper check. But he said what he didn't get before, just being a human being, was feeling this kind of equality and just on the line. It didn't matter that he had fourth grade education or he had a different faith or an accent or ethnicity. For him, he was an equal, standing up for his human dignity in the workplace. And even when he talked about it, I would watch him light up. And it was the first time my dad, I don't know, just at that moment realized what the importance of being part of something bigger than him and what that meant of his ability to be able to thrive. And so I want to hear about your story. I know you've told it so many times, but I think people need to realize that's why you fight so hard right now.
Yeah, just like you, I love talking about my roots and where I come from. And my grandfather Fain, he was from Eastern Kentucky, and you know, all four of my grandparents went through the Great Depression. My grandmother Fain actually was, her and her siblings were left at an orphanage in Eastern Tennessee during the Depression. Their parents couldn't afford to care for them anymore, and that was a story with a similar story with a lot of people back then. But you know, my grandfather Fain actually from Eastern Kentucky, he didn't graduate high school. I believe he got to junior high and then left school and worked on the farm in Kentucky. And you know, when people went through the Depression back then, I mean, it was destitution pretty much for all four of my grandparents, and they all ended up at some point migrating north, and it was, you know, life-changing. They were able to get jobs. Three of my grandparents got jobs at GM, and then my grandpa Fain got a job at Chrysler, and it changed their lives. Three of the four.
I don't know why it gives me goosebumps, because their grandson is now
the
president of the UAW.
It's hard. It's really hard to get my head around that. When I actually was just talking to someone yesterday when I was here in DC, and just telling one of our people, I said, you know what, I remember being here in fifth grade with my family on a vacation, and you know, never in my life did I think I would be here working and
or leading
doing things to you know, help humanity and help working class people. So it's amazing. Just like with my grandparents, I think of them a lot, especially the last 8 months through all this, is just you know, go back to them, my parents, and just where I come from, co-workers in the plant floor, and you know, the battles we fought over the years. And so it's very humbling, and it's a great honor to be in this position, to be able to affect change. And I mean, with my grandpa Fain, you know, he was so proud of the work. You know, when he got the job in 1937, the year the UAW organized Chrysler, he saved every check stub he ever earned until 1972 when he retired. But I always carry one with me every time, every day that I work. I've always carried one, and it's just a reminder of our roots and where we come from. And but you know, that's what it's all about to me, and that's what this fight's been about. It's about getting back to our roots, because unfortunately the UAW in the last 40 years really got away from you know, they adopted a company union philosophy and worked hand in hand with the companies, and workers went backwards. So that's really what this
I always felt like, intentional or not, you know, you felt like auto workers were being left behind. I mean, I remember in 2018, like the first thing that I went into Union Hall, and you know, I was running, and they said tier system, and I said, tell me more. It was the first time I even knew there was a tier system. And when they described it, it was like the complete opposite of what my father described, and being on the line as an equal. And I don't know, I remember I texted you, like, my father would have been so ecstatic if he could have seen what his union was able to do. And even at the moment when you guys were organizing and you were kind of talking differently than folks in the past, I mean, just like it felt different. You know, you're talking about moving mountains and everything. We're going to talk a little bit later about moving bigger mountains. But folks that no, there's no way they're going to get rid of tiers.
Yeah.
Like there was no belief. There's so many folks, maybe establishment folks outside of the union especially, were, why do all three of you got to strike together? This is not going to be successful. There were so many folks. You're smiling now, but it was hurtful. I thought it was hurtful because, folks think. I said, what are you thanking me for? I just trusted the workers. I didn't do. I just said, what's up? Where do you need me to go? But it is important to tell folks. I was there when folks didn't think you could get rid of COLA or bring it back. That they got rid of it. There's no way you can get cost of living adjustment back, which I thought was an easy ask, right? Or the fact that addressing tier system. The fact that you all even, you got to talk about this. Like the fact that the future of auto industry and electric vehicles and how you've incorporated the movement for human dignity and justice for auto workers got incorporated into this. Everything they said you couldn't do, you got on the table. And I know it's part of a larger team. I know that. I've seen it.
Yep.
And incredible folks on the ground and the workers that stood out in the rain sometimes, in the cold with their families. But you got to talk about all these naysayers because it needs to be shown over and over again because these folks are going to say it again as you try to move bigger mountains that it's impossible.
It's, and that's a lot. We just talked about right there. That is a lot. But it's, the thing to me is there's one word I hate. It's can't.
Yeah.
I've been told my whole life what I can't do. And there's not a word in the world that motivates me more than the word can't. So when someone says I can't do something, it's a challenge. And but that's something that really, when I was elected, I really wanted to focus on with our membership was, we've always heard from our leadership, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't. And so I spoke about that a lot in our contract campaign. We have to abandon the word can't, and we have to believe. And that's when I talked about faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. And I heard it over and over. When I was running for this position, people messaging me, saying that we'll never get cost of living back. We can't end tiers. The EV work is gone. And even throughout this contract campaign and during bargaining, there were people here in DC and everywhere saying that, I didn't know what I was doing and that I would never get an agreement to the finish line. At the end of the day, the thing we really focused on was really energizing the workers because, I come from the plant floor. I understand. I don't forget where I come from, and that's the thing. Every day I go to work, it's the first thing I think of is the people in those plants and the job they're doing and the 7-day weeks they're putting in, the 12-hour long days, and people working 2 jobs because of tiers. I had people send me a letter from Wentzville, Missouri, a worker there, asking me if he could belong to 2 unions, if I would give him the ability to do that through the Constitution because he was making 17-something an hour at Wentzville GM plant, and he had an offer to go to Lear Seating, and he said he can't afford to survive and feed his family off the $17 an hour at one job. So, that's the reality of what most of our workers were facing. And in 2007, I was anti-ratification when they implemented tiers in the Big Three, and caught a lot of hell for it. But it was the right thing to do because many of us knew this day was coming when it was going to be just 2 classes of workers, multiple classes of workers doing the same work. And so that was a major mission of ours, was to eliminate the wage tiers. We still have work to do there. There's still the retiree healthcare tier and retirement tier. And so, we addressed the wage part of it, but there's still a lot of work to do with that. And, you look at cost of living, we were able to bring that back as it was when it was suspended. And then the EV transition, obviously, that was dead on arrival when I took over as president. They had already formed the joint ventures, and we were told by legal teams and everything that that's not going to happen.
That was impossible.
And so, we again,
people kept saying it was impossible.
Yeah, so we've still got work to do there, but we moved some big mountains there and set a standard in the battery industry, and now we need to carry that standard everywhere. We need to organize like hell. There's 6 battery plants currently operating in the U.S., and there's 24 more planned.
I gotta tell you, even when I think it was maybe the first week, and as you all walked out, I was in Wayne, and it was pretty dark out, and they were sitting. I remember there was an older woman. She had to be in her 60s, and in another, because there was, people need to realize when you strike, there's a number of positions. There's like 18 gates maybe covered, 18 to 20 gates covered, and there was just 2 of them there because I was kind of doing just walking. And I could tell they didn't know who I was, which is great because people tend to be a little bit more chill and talk to me. And I said, hey, so how long you've worked here? And she said something about like 27 years, something of that sort. And then I said, how about you? And he's like, well, you know, he kind of was a very young guy. And he goes, a year. And she goes, I'm here for him. And I got bawled. I like started crying a little bit. And I was like, that's beautiful. And he, you know, you should see, he looked at her. And I don't know if they had not talked before, but he kind of looked at her and he kind of was like this warmness towards, and it was like that moment I was like, this is so important, that what we're being able to do. I gotta tell you, so Shawn, like you guys are not done.
Oh no.
Like usually you get it done and you're like, nah.
It's just a start.
I know. But even when you're all, because it wasn't even like a moment of waiting. It was like, I think it was the next day. All of a sudden I started seeing folks talk about, what about Hyundai and what about Honda, and talk a little bit about what this means. I mean, I saw folks, you know, really raising those beautiful hands up and saying, these hands do this. And, you know, talking about the importance of the fact of understanding that their bodies are being used to produce all this profit and they don't get the benefit of that. And talk a little bit about what this is. What are you calling the campaign? How can like my residents who are watching get involved?
So again, you know, the beauty of the people on the picket line, it's something I go back to when I was elected. I was sworn in on March 26, you know, just over 8 months ago, and the next day I was running the bargaining convention, and it was a divided house. I mean, we just went through our first ever Democratic direct election in this union, and so, you know, that's one thing I'm very proud of with our membership, is seeing how that changed over the course of this contract campaign and through the bargaining process. Was that there was a lot of division initially, and as we got into the contract campaign and rallied our members around our issues and what mattered, and got focused on the contract, everyone came together. And so that was the beauty of the strike, just seeing our membership, even workers that weren't striking, were holding rallies, going to, you know, stand up with other workers. You know, the Michigan Assembly plant and the Toledo Jeep plant, it was amazing to watch. You know, they did a Bronco caravan to the Jeep plant, and they did a Jeep Wrangler caravan to the Bronco plant. And so, you know, young workers and old workers, everyone was standing together. And so that's one thing I'm really proud of through that whole process, was it brought our unity back to this union. It's more unified than I've seen it in my lifetime. And so, you know, the contract, you know, it's a record contract, the greatest in our history, but it's just a start. I talk a lot about my grandparents' generation because, you know, they went from nothing and abject poverty, destitution, to living the American dream. And that's really what this whole issue is about. This whole campaign was about, not just UAW members. It's about working class people and the poor. And so. Yeah,
they always told, you know, my dad, and grew up, you know, in another country, comes here and said, if you work hard, this is what you can see. I mean, you know, I'm one of 14, and it's funny, everybody's like, you have straight teeth, and I was like, it's because of the UAW. But I remember the moment they got dental care. My dad took us all to the dentist. I mean, I remember even when they changed the vision coverage to cover a lot more options, and I just remember moments where the contracts would change, what more my dad could provide for our family and around healthcare and so forth. But you still, like, even at those moments, I remember still like the struggle, but it wasn't as hard.
But that's really what led this next phase. Was, you know, when we took over, we wanted to do one thing. We really decided to do was ran our first ever contract campaign, and then we wanted to be very. We revamped our PR team we relabeled it the communications team, and we really wanted to get messaging out there to our members, and not just our members, the general public. And you know, over the last 40 years, our leadership's had a bad history of letting the companies set the narrative and villainize the unions and as greedy workers, and it's the exact opposite. So we really revamped all those things. We started messaging about the gross profits of these companies, you know, how much money they're making, the CEO pay exploding while our pay was going backwards. And so it was important.
Even you know, it's important to note, yes, their pay went up like over 20%, but even their rhetoric and how they talked about workers, I noticed it. You know, I don't know if other folks noticed it. It's more of like, you know, one of the CEOs, I will not mention, saying to me, well, they can go and drive to Flint. And I said, that's 50 miles. Their family is in Detroit. And it's like, well, too bad. You know, like it's that mentality of, you know, oh well, it's almost like entrapping our families. And even when we had the event in Detroit, I remember speaking to someone from Illinois, and I kid you not, like he's carrying, I think, his grandchild, and he looks up at me and he says, I hardly see her anymore because they shut down, you know, lines in Belvedere and all that. And you could see him just like, I don't get to see my family anymore. That they don't realize some of their actions are just, they're separating families, they're impacting communities. I mean, I can't even imagine some of my smaller cities if the plant was to leave, or, I mean, they literally are anchors, but it's because we provided so much support. I mean, folks don't realize it's not just, you know, the workers, it's also the fact that much of those plants got a lot of tax breaks to build those plants. You know, some of them, you know, all in the name of we'll create jobs, we're gonna create good union jobs, and they get in that corporate welfare line and get those tax breaks for the land and tax breaks for almost sometimes multiple decades of years. But it is incredibly frustrating that folks got away with, it's almost was so hard because it made it this, between even elected folks, that somehow our workers didn't deserve better.
Well, the you know, the amazing part of this campaign was, as we got into this, was that the general public started joining in on our Facebook Lives. And
you know
so,
what about the Facebook Lives? Shawn, I kid you not, people are like, oh, what is he doing? And I'm sitting there just like, I think it's genius. No, because we would tune in and we would know exactly what happened that week. And we, you know, and I kid you not, I was like checking the comments to see, oh, somebody brought up tears again. Somebody said, hey, what about cola? And so I thought it was incredible.
Yeah, well, the beauty of it, how it all worked together, though, was just the fact that we weren't just speaking to our members anymore. We were speaking to the general public. We were speaking to non-union workers in all the plants all over the country and all over the world. And so that's really, there were workers at these non-union auto companies that were actually going online, and they found old websites where we had organizing sign-up sheets and cards and stuff, and people were signing cards, and just we happened to start seeing these things come in, letters coming in, questions from people about joining the UAW. First it was a couple people, then it was dozens, and then we literally had thousands of people that signed union cards online from a page from 2017.
Wow.
And so, you know, that's really what led us to our current campaign, which we're calling our Stand Up 2.0 campaign, which is organizing all these non-union automotive plants, and it's there's more energy now than we've ever seen, and not just in auto, in every sector. You know, working class people are fed up. They're fed up with being left behind. They're fed up with the massive inequality gap we have between rich and poor, and it's in the last 40 years it's just exploded. And so,
people are feeling it.
Yeah.
So you doing this campaign right away, of course they're going to push back.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, they'll spend this exorbitant amount of money on the union busting. You know, I hate calling them consultants. There should be a different word for them. And
parasites.
And so, but they're you know, they're anti-working families. They're anti, you know, people being able to thrive. So they're out there, and so I saw that you all filed. You feel like there's some Talk a little bit about that. Like, are they really? So they're seeing this movement, and they're already pushing back.
I mean, this is standard operating procedure for non-union companies. You know, the laws in this country are tailored to favor the wealthy and big business, and so even though there are laws in place that say they can't do certain things, they break them every day. They willfully violate them, and you know, by the time a lot of the sees the light of day, they've killed a drive, and so they always they hire firms to come in. They pay billions of dollars in union avoidance firms and or parasites, and you know, they come in and they lie to workers, they threaten workers. The companies are already having
intimidation.
They're already having closed door meetings. So they're already going to work on that. But you know, I was in Kentucky a week ago, spoke to some workers from the Georgetown Toyota plant, and you know, it's really great to see the energy from the workers because they're fed up. And as I told them, you're going to hear these things. The company, this is what the wealthy and the corporate class has always done. They divide the masses, they divide the working class over issues, and they make people afraid. They make them afraid to stand up for themselves, and they want them to think it's hopeless. And as I told them, just like in the Big Free campaign, you're going to do this, the workers are going to do this, but the facts are on our side. The facts are on your side. They can put all the fear they want out there. The facts are simply this. In the non-union companies, we talked in the Big Three about $250 billion in profits in the Big Three in the last decade, and CEO pay going up 40% in the last 4 years. In these non-union companies, the Japanese and Korean 6 made $480 billion, half a trillion dollars.
Wow.
The German 3 made $500 billion in profits in the last decade. Toyota alone made $256 billion in the last decade, which is more than the Big Three combined. And their CEO, just in the last 2 years, his pay went up 125% in the last 2 years. So the 9% crumbs they threw at the workers at Toyota to make them, hopefully they'll just turn away and keep doing what they're doing, accept the crumbs. I mean, I'm sure they'd much rather have 125% increases like the CEO got in the last 2 years. But so we have to stick to the facts. The facts speak for themselves. The truth will win out, and that's what happened in the Big Three bargaining. And I think that's what's going to change things for these non-union workers. They have to want it. They have to stand up for it. We're going to be there right with them every step of the way, and I believe we're going to see.
Yeah, one of the things you guys have done with the research, I mean, I saw it even in Union Hall, we were downriver, and as we were getting, because there is this gaslighting that's happening, they can't afford it, they'll go belly up, they'll go to a different state, or they'll leave, or shutter. I've heard it all.
Oh, yeah.
And then you all come out with the numbers, and you could see it on the workers' faces, like, they didn't even know. They didn't even know that they were making such exorbitant, just amounts of money, while the cost of labor that they're putting towards workers that are using their bodies to make them record profits. That was the case. When they hear that, you can see the flipping just in the union hall. I could see their faces go, no, we're not going to stand by. They can't afford it, and we deserve better.
Well, there's two. I mean, the top 10 non-union auto manufacturers in the last decade made $1 trillion in profits, $12 trillion in revenue, and the other part of this was, when you look at our contract campaign, the first thing that came out of the company's mouths when it's ended, and the talking heads, was this is going to drive the price of vehicles through the roof.
Yes, I heard that.
But the irony is, they don't have to raise the price of cars 1 penny, and they will still make billions of dollars in profits. And the sad reality is, in the last 4 years, auto manufacturers raised the price of vehicles 30 to 35%.
They've been price gouging before. They've been price gouging.
So all it is corporate greed and price gouging. But now they want to blame the unions. They want to use it as a scapegoat to
because it's easy. It's easy to think that it must be labor and not greed.
Yeah. But that's all it is. It's corporate greed. So.
Well, one of the best Facebook lives you did was about moving the mountain, and I just felt it at that moment. And I think it was because there was a moment where, folks were really putting the pressure on everybody, and it just felt like we couldn't get past that hump, and people are leaving that table and everything. And I told my team, get ready, I think we're about to move some really, really big mountains. And I want, a lot of our residents to know, when I was on the line, there was a guy with 3 kids, took a bus, stood there and striked with the UAW workers. There's so many incredible things. I saw people walking into union halls, making donations, coming by to support the workers, because I think everyone is connected to this story about we deserve to be able to thrive, not just survive, that we're exhausted, as even in our country, like people in all sectors, you see it, unionizing, working, saying enough, we're tired. I don't care if it's the folks making coffee, to the folks in the field, migrants in the field, or folks building these vehicles. Everybody seems to rise up. And I always tell people, if there's anybody that's going to save us from corporate greed and policies that are driven by profit, it's our workers. And so I just am very incredibly inspired by what y'all have been able to do. But if there's anything, if there was something that I can go home and tell my mom, like, this is what you can do to help us get these other auto workers, help them access to be able to unionize their right in our country. It's a very important right, to be able to get the benefits that my dad got. What can we tell people?
I think the biggest thing to me that people need to understand, and I think it gets lost in all this talk about unions and wages and benefits, and there's a lot of great things unions bring, but the biggest part of this equation is if you do not have a union, you're an employee at will.
Yeah.
You can be fired for any reason or no reason at all, and that's in a non-union environment. The boss has all the power and all the control. You have no power and no control, because if you speak out, if you do anything, they can fire you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
You literally have no rights. You know, the union is a great equalizer in that equation, and that's the thing I think gets lost in all this talk about wages and benefits and, you know, dignity, is just the fact that without a union contract, you really have no rights as a worker. And so, you know, and again, I think the facts speak for themselves. You know, the facts are definitely on the side of the workers. And that's the one thing I didn't speak about during the COVID pandemic was, you know, there was a great lesson in that.
Yeah.
And all that sadness was just the fact that when workers withheld their labor and didn't go to work because they didn't want to risk their lives, you know, it shut things down. Working class people have the power, and union or non-union or not, if we don't go to work, this world don't move.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the next point of this is just we have to organize, we have to come together and harness that power as one movement. And when we do that, that will turn this thing around where the wealthy class, where 26 billionaires have as much wealth as half of humanity. That's how we end that crisis. We turn the tables when we come together, we organize, and we take that power back. And that's really what this is all about.
Yeah, it's incredibly inspiring. Especially, I work in Congress, and the majority of my colleagues are millionaires, Shawn. They're in an income bracket that is completely disconnected with the majority of Americans. Even when we had a government shutdown in my first term, many of my colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans, said, I don't get it, why are the federal employees in the food bank line? And I just looked at them in awe, like, because they live check by check, you know? Well, why can't they get a loan? I mean, these are the things of understanding that this is why outside of institutions like Congress and outside of the Oval Office, movement and organizing and pushing back against these really unjust and unfair you know, practices and, you know, again, the inability for people to truly thrive in our country, it's gonna be what happens outside of these institutions. So thank you so much for showing many of my colleagues. I mean, it feels good because I was the one like, no, I think this is possible. And you showed us all, and it really inspired my team and I and all of us to just have a lot more hope that even if we can't get these bills passed here, and having them push against corporate greed, you all are going to do it for us. So
Well,
I just really appreciate it.
I appreciate all the work you've done for labor. You know, you've been there from day one, and you know, that's the thing that I think a lot of politicians better wake up and realize is that you know, 75% of America supported us in this fight.
That's right. Yeah.
You go back to the recession, and 75% of Americans were against us. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to we didn't speak about the truth back then, the facts. You put the facts out there, working class people know better. And so, you know, people in the political realm need to wake up and realize that this campaign resonated with working class people from all walks of life, from all sectors, union or non-union, it doesn't matter. People are fed up of being left behind. And so those are the things that matter to working class people and the poor people. And that's the job of politicians. This is about people. It's a government of the people, by the people, not of the rich and of the corporations. That's what it's turned into because of rulings like Citizens United and all those things, but where money is bought and paid for our politics. But we have the power, just as we do in the workplace, we have the power with the vote.
Yeah.
And so that's what's going to turn this around.
And I think I remember you saying they got to choose a side.
You bet.
So remember, as we're trying to move larger mountains, let's choose the side of the working people.
You bet.
And so again, thank you so much to President Fain for an
thank you.
incredible, you know, just this incredible sit down of just understanding this movement and how many of my community members who really saw this in awe can connect with it and understand it. So thank you so much for for everything and all your hard work, and of course all the workers.
You
Thank
bet.
you so much.
Appreciate your work.
Yeah, thank you.